Ho, ho, ho! Is this thing on? Mic check. One sleigh, two sleigh. That's right. I've got a podcast now. Stories, jokes, and some serious North Pole nonsense. Santa Has a Podcast is out now at santahasapodcast.com. Ho, ho, ho!
Support American jobs while standing up for your values. OldGloryDepot.com brings you conservative pride on premium, made-in-USA gear. Don't settle. Wear your patriotism proudly. Visit OldGloryDepot.com today.
I say this every election cycle, and I'll say it again. The 2024 political field was intense, so don't get left behind in 2025. If you're running for office, the first thing on your to-do list should be securing your name on the web. With a yourname.vote domain from GoDaddy.com, you'll stand out and make your mark. Don't wait. Get yours today.
Welcome to another episode of Breaking Battlegrounds with your host Chuck Warren. I'm Sam Stone. Our first guest up today, Daniel DiMartino, is a fellow at the Manhattan Institute and a PhD candidate in economics at Columbia University. His research focuses on immigration, especially selection, assimilation, and highly skilled immigration. Follow him on X at Daniel DiMartino. Daniel, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me.
Daniel, so before we get into this great report you did on the fiscal impact of immigration, you had a great little podcast segment this week on what drives protest culture. I think it's relevant after the No Kings rally. As I listened to your podcast, one thing I found funny is that overseas they had a no tyrants instead of no kings because there's lots of kings in other countries. Is that true? Is that true? They really did that?
So, the Democrats have an organization called Democrats Abroad for the Americans who live abroad. And so they call it No Tyrants Abroad because you don't want to upset, the King of England, all that stuff. Or even worse, the King of Saudi Arabia.
Why? I find the protest interesting. So I had two responses when this was happening during the weekend. I got my hair cut. This woman's Serbian. She's from Serbia, first generation. And her comment was, Americans are the most foolish people in the world because they don't realize how good they have it. And she goes back every summer. And then I had another person who's from Venezuela. And she was just shaking her head. And I just said, well, they're concerned about due process. I'm trying to give this side, right? She goes, have there been any American citizens arrested? So they were both, as immigrants to this country, first generation, doing it the right way, by the way. They were a bit stunned by it. Why do you think we have this protest culture, especially on the left? I don't think the right could ever get that many people there unless there's some real major constitutional crisis.
Right. People on the right have other things to do.
Yeah. We have kids and soccer games and stuff. But John, what do you think? Why do we have this protest culture?
Well, it's interesting, the protest culture, because I did go to protests when I was a kid in Venezuela, but obviously the situation was much different. I think it's because in the U.S., there's been a lot of people, especially young, who have been deceived in that the democratic process is not enough, right? In Venezuela, we had to protest because there was no democratic process left. So the only way you could express yourself truly was protesting in the street. Here in the U.S., there are elections. Donald Trump won, and now there are midterms coming up, and there are special elections, and there are governor's elections. We have one in New Jersey very soon. There's another one in Virginia. People should just vote. And, the demonstrations are fine. It's part of the First Amendment. I think these protests are not something I would complain about because they have been peaceful, largely, unlike what they did in 2020 and unlike what they did in other years on the left.
I think peaceful, but also really kind of toothless. I came away from that weekend thinking, okay, the usual suspects in the media, went berserk over it. But outside of them, in everyday life, there was almost no reaction to that protest. Have they crossed the Rubicon where people are kind of tuning out these actions that they're doing?
I think people are tuning out, especially in the cities, because they see that what Trump has done with the National Guard, which is part of what the protests did on ICE, is actually making cities safer. Objectively, D.C. is much safer city now. Chicago, L.A., I hope they send the National Guard to New York City. Because the reality is that more policing deters crime. You're not going to have somebody robbing another person in front of a National Guard that's armed. That's just as simple. Now, that's not the final solution. The final solution is to actually increase local policing, indict the criminals, and it is the left that hasn't done that. And even the moderate Democrats understand that at the local level. And also, the economy is doing well. There's not major scandal. Trump just achieved, a more peaceful Middle East. There isn't really anything meaningful to protest.
I always wonder, and Chuck, you and I have talked about this a little bit, for the left, which has so aggressively abandoned religion, it seems like they've turned politics into religion, and protest is their church. This is their worship that they all go out and get on their knees for. I just wonder if that's healthy, because the difference to me between that and religious worship is that one is designed to build up the spirit and the other is designed to tear down everything around it.
Well, but Sam, and we want to get with Martin here on the immigration. I think the thing is they do view this as their religion, and they do view what they're doing as building up. I mean, that's the thing. It's just building up only one segment of society. These seem, Martin, tell me if you're wrong, these same people at the No Kings or No Tyrants protest are the same people who would 100% support England's current regime of suppressing and arresting people for social media posts. Is that right or wrong?
Absolutely. I think you're absolutely right. And not only that, if you're a Christian, or especially if you're a Catholic like me, you really cannot say no kings, because technically Christ is the king.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And even Poland declares him king, right? So it's not like you can't just say no kings. So the real question is, who is their king? And I think their king is woke ideology.
100%. All right, let's get into the main event here. You have a piece that came out. We're with Daniel D. Martino. He's with the Manhattan Institute, and he's a PhD candidate of economics at Columbia. And you have released a report on the fiscal impact of immigration. Please tell our audience about what this report is and what surprised you, which there should always be when a researcher's doing something that surprises them. What surprised you in your findings?
Yeah, so essentially what I did is, how much taxes do immigrants of different characteristics pay versus government benefits they receive? So that, are immigrants a burden, are immigrants an asset to the rest of the country? That's the question I sought to answer, and provide a tool for legislators to evaluate different immigration policies. Is this going to increase the debt, decrease the debt, GDP, all that? And, well, the thing that surprised me is that if you looked at country of origin of immigrants, Indian immigrants are by far the best. And I actually thought it would be kind of close between Indians and Chinese immigrants, because the Chinese tend to be highly educated, they're similar work ethic. And turns out the average Indian immigrant is almost twice as beneficial to the budget as the average Chinese immigrant. And then the rest are very far away.
Entrepreneurship.
And the worst. Yeah, the worst immigrant group when it comes to fiscal impact, and there's very few groups by country that were negative, but the most negative one was people from El Salvador, and then slightly less people from Mexico.
Really? Why do you think that is?
Just because they have very low levels of education. Only about 10% of less or Mexican Americans, or just Mexican immigrants in America, have a college degree. So their earnings are very low. They receive a lot of welfare. So it's just a math. Compare that to Indians. 70% of Indians have a college or graduate degree.
70% of Indians who come to America have a college or graduate degree. Is that what you're saying?
Well, that is not the total population. Of the more recent Indian immigrants is even more than 70%.
Wow.
You know what?
You will just not find an Indian immigrant who is a high school dropout. On the other hand, almost half of Mexican immigrants are high school dropouts.
With the Indians, do you think the difference between them and the Chinese comes down to entrepreneurship? I would think that is, you're talking about populations with similar levels of academic achievement, mathematics, learning, all those type of things, but one culture is highly entrepreneurial and the other is highly structured.
So I actually think that the differences have not even anything to do with the country they come from. It's all to do with the selection of the people from those countries that come to America. The average Indian in India is much less educated than the average Indian in America. only 5 to 10% of Indians in India have college degrees, right? It's a totally different picture. It's like the Mexicans here. And that is because the Indians who come to America are sponsored by companies, usually through H-1B visas, and they come with highly paid job offers. The Mexicans, a lot of them come here illegally, and the rest, almost all of them, come because of chain migration, because they have a relative who was born here. The Chinese, the reason they don't have as much of a positive economic impact is that they tend to be older than the Indians, because there are more Chinese that come through family ties than employment relative to the Indians.
Interesting. Talk to us. What does legal status mean for your report? If someone comes legally versus illegally, and we've got 3 minutes for this answer. Go ahead.
Yes. So the average legal immigrant that comes to America will actually reduce the deficit significantly.
How much?
By several. Yeah, I'll tell you right now. It's by several $100,000 over a period of 30 years. While the average illegal immigrant will increase the national debt by about $100,000, a new one, over 30 years.
That's a pretty stark difference. And when we come back from the break, we'll have a little bit more time, but I want to get into at that point, what kind of structure should U.S. policymakers be looking for in terms of immigration, Chuck?
We have a minute left for this question. So you wrote in this that we need to shift visas toward high skilled categories. What are the type of high skilled categories we need to shift those visas to?
Yeah, so all the categories that allow an employer to sponsor a worker, especially they're called the EB1 and EB2 categories. To just get an EB2, you need an advanced degree, not even just a bachelor's. And it's actually severely backlogged. And on the other hand, we just randomly give out 55,000 green cards to people based on the country they're born in the diversity lottery. We shouldn't have a diversity lottery, and instead we should give out more employment visas.
If we have just a minute here left, so I don't want to get into a longer answer here, but should the U.S. consider, given the deficit of tradespeople, that we create or focus on a category that includes people who are plumbers, electricians, skilled carpenters, all those things?
Well, under my ideal system, it wouldn't discriminate on education, but on pay. So if you're a low-pay person who has a college degree, you shouldn't come here. But if there's really a shortage of tradespeople, then the wages will reflect that, and they should be able to get in through a wage-based system.
All right. We're going to be coming back with more from Daniel DiMartino here in just a moment, folks. We want to talk to him about a little bit more about this report, also a bit about his experience growing up in Venezuela and some of the background there, because obviously that's in the news again today. We have a lot more to cover there. And stay tuned for our second guest today, Albert Eisenberg, political strategist and principal of Blue State Red. He's going to be talking about healthcare, which obviously has been dominating the news here quite a bit also recently, and is something that Republicans really have to tackle, Chuck, coming out of this government shutdown. So, folks, make sure you're staying tuned for that. Also, if you are not already, why are you not downloading the podcast? You're getting extra content every single week that is just for you, our podcast listeners. You get Kylie's Corner, everyone's favorite segment. You get a ton of good stuff. Substack, we have great articles. So there's a ton of content out there. Go to breakingbattlegrounds.vote or wherever you get your favorite podcast to sign up for that. We're coming right back.
All right, imagine this. You're running for president. Yes, president. What's the first thing you need? Well, besides the $1 million fundraising, you need to secure your web domain. You need your name, .vote. Easy to remember, straight to the point, and a direct link to your campaign. No, but seriously, whether you're getting out to vote or convincing people that yes, you can fix the potholes on Main Street, a .vote domain helps you stand out. It's not just a website, it's a call to action. Head over to GoDaddy.com or name.com, type in your name, .vote, and boom, you're ready to make a lasting impact. Get started today with your .vote web address.
Welcome back to Breaking Battlegrounds. We're continuing on now with Daniel DiMartino, fellow at the Manhattan Institute and a PhD candidate in economics at Columbia University. He has a fantastic report out. We highly encourage everyone to check it out, The Fiscal Impact of Immigration. It is, frankly, something that every policymaker in this country, Chuck, ought to be reading
100%
before they cast their next vote on this issue. So, Daniel, thank you once again for joining us. We very much appreciate having you on the program.
Thank you. I'm enjoying it.
Daniel, so in your report, The Fiscal Impact of Immigration, you've presented some points that we need to do. One is rank H-1B visas by wage. Explain to our audience what an H-1B visa is, and what do you mean by, separating it by wage?
Yeah, so it is the main path for immigrants who have college degrees to come to America, sponsored by a company. The job has to be in an area that requires a degree, and the employee needs to have a degree as well, usually a master's degree. Half of them do. So the problem now is that there's 85,000 of those visas available for private companies, and they are just given in a lottery because there are more companies there are more than 85,000 jobs being sought. And the consequence is that you have like a 25% selection chance only. There's like 4 times as many. So why would you give them randomly when there are people who make, say, $300,000 that are getting job offers and people who are having $60,000? You would rather have the person making much more money because they're much more valuable for the American company.
And that is an annual number, right? So every year that number is granted in H-1B visas. Okay.
By the way,
Yes, and the visa is good for 3 years, can be extended to 6, and then the company can, if they choose, sponsor them for permanent residency, and then there's a whole other system for that.
What do you think, by the way, about Trump's $100,000 fee for the H-1B visas?
I think it's a bad... It's like a big hammer for a small nail, let's say. The issue with the fee is that it doesn't solve the underlying problem, which is that we should just rank them by wage. And 2, it will actually reduce the number of visas issued for the non-capped categories, which is universities, hospitals that bring in physicians, and also for research institutions. So if you reduce the number of visas being issued, because these are highly paid professionals, this actually may cost the government money rather than raise it in the form of the fee.
All right. You also recommend that we auction investor visas. Explain that to our audience, and what does that mean?
Yes. So this is a very interesting program. If you're a multimillionaire abroad that wants to invest at least $1 million in America and create at least 10 jobs, you can get what's called an EB-5 green card. The problem is that the process is so onerous for the government to certify your business, say that it's your money, that you created the jobs. It takes at least 5 years for the government to even review the application. That's outrageous, right? If you want to bring in millionaires to invest and create jobs here. So instead of doing all of this and having all these government employees checking things, let's just give out the nearly 10,000 green cards available in this category and just auction them. If you want a $100,000 fee, these people will pay even more for that because it's not a temporary visa, it's a green card. I estimate that the average investor would be willing to pay $500,000 for it. Imagine if we could fundraise so many millions of dollars, hundreds of millions, by just auctioning them and making the process simpler for investors.
Well, but there would be the second tier effect. So first, the U.S. government coffers would receive those auction fees. But secondly, these folks you're talking about would be generating enormous amounts of government tax income through their economic activity.
Correct.
That's right. Even more than the people who come through it now, because it would be the people who can pay the actual fee that is auctioned. And it wouldn't be an arbitrary amount because it would be an auction. It would be the market that sets the amount.
So you also recommend legalizing some undocumented immigrants via fee. Who are these undocumented immigrants? What jobs do they do, and what would we do on that?
So I understand this is the most controversial part of any plan, is the whole how to deal with the illegal population here. The issue, though, is that the average deportation costs nearly $13,000. So if you're going to deport somebody, they better be a drain on the government or committing a crime. Otherwise, this is just going to cost money. And so an alternative is instead asking the illegal immigrants to pay money to remain in America without a pathway to citizenship, but with the ability to work. And so what I'm proposing is a fee of $5,000 per year for 10 years. So the illegal immigrants who want to qualify for this, not only would they need to be known criminals, but they will need to pay over 10 years $50,000. You might think that's a lot, but per year it's actually not that much, even less for the benefit of staying here. So that they would be able to work legally, so they would earn more money, pay more taxes. They wouldn't be able to qualify for any welfare program or Social Security. And then I think that would be a very fair compromise that wouldn't change the electorate and that would raise billions of dollars to reduce our debt.
We're with Daniel DiMartino. He's with a fellow at the Manhattan Institute. Daniel, you're from Venezuela, correct?
Yes, I am.
So what was it like growing up there? I understand you've been here since, 2016, 2017. What are your feelings on what's going on right now down there and the military presence in the Caribbean?
Well, I am very happy about what the Trump administration is doing in the Caribbean. I hope that they continue bombing drug-dealing boats from Maduro and that hopefully they do even more. Because the reality is that Venezuela shouldn't be a socialist nation that's ruled by this tyrant drug trafficker. It should be one of the world's richest countries. We shouldn't be, I shouldn't be an immigrant in the U.S. I should have lived a normal life in Venezuela like people used to do. And it's a shame, right? It's bad for America because of illegal immigration. It's bad because of drugs. And it's bad because of the energy sector, right? We're missing out on millions of barrels of oil a day that Venezuela could be producing. And so it's dangerous, and I think Trump is right to do what he's doing.
How much, we asked this of a previous guest, I want to throw this to you. How much would a stable capitalist partner in Venezuela change the dynamic for the U.S. across Latin America?
Oh, huge, because Venezuela is the one funding the destabilization through communist regimes in other countries. Where do you think the money that financed the campaign of Colombian President Gustavo Petro, who's now trying to bully Trump, came from? It came from Venezuela. His own Solicitor General opened an investigation on him for this. His son admitted it. Where do you think the money goes to support the Cuban and the Nicaraguan dictatorships? Are the opposition to Milei in Argentina? Like so many things. The Venezuelan regime has even financed communist parties in Europe. And do you think they don't try to destabilize the U.S.? Maduro himself met with the founders of Black Lives Matter in 2015. All of these things are connected, and people don't quite understand that all these criminal organizations, their goal is to destabilize America from the inside because they know they can't beat us militarily.
We've got about 45 seconds left with you. I imagine you still have family and friends down in Venezuela. Would that be correct?
I have a lot of friends, but thankfully no close family, so I'm safe from them targeting them.
What are your friends saying? What's going on there right now?
With regards to the regime, the regime is still in power, and they are trying to arrest people who dissent on social media. So all my friends stay quiet on social media. Only through private messages they can express themselves, and they love what President Trump is doing.
That's fantastic. It sounds like they're England. Yeah, they're suppressing everybody on social media.
Yeah,
Daniel, isn't that funny?
Yeah, it's funny and sad. Daniel, how can people reach out to you? How can they read your writings? Tell us a little bit more about you as we wrap up the segment.
Of course. So they can follow me on X at Daniel DiMartino, DiMartino, and also on Instagram, the same name, Daniel DiMartino, as well as my website, and really on the Manhattan Institute page where they can read my report on the fiscal impact of immigration.
And anyone on the right who isn't going to the Manhattan Institute and reading everything on there is missing out from a great resource. Daniel DiMartino, thank you so much for joining us. Breaking Battlegrounds, coming right back.
Old Glory Depot isn't just a website. It's a movement. Featuring unapologetically conservative shirts and gear, we're proud to deliver 100% American-made products. From premium materials to bold designs, every purchase supports American jobs and celebrates our country. Show your pride, support your values, and shop oldglorydepot.com because patriotism never goes out of style.
All right, welcome back to Breaking Battlegrounds with yours, Chuck Warren. I'm Sam Stone. Our next guest up, Albert Eisenberg, political strategist and principal of Redbridge. Follow him on X at Albidelphia, which, Albert, that is a fantastic X tag. Thank you so much for joining us, and welcome to the program.
Thank you. Actually, when I started my career, I had an even better one.
What was that?
Thanks, guys.
What was
Sorry,
it?
I had an even better X handle. when I first started in politics, I was at Real Hot Cheetos. And then I got printed in some major publications, and I was like 25 or 26, and I thought, man, I got to be more professional. I actually regret switching.
Yeah,
I
regret that for you too, because I would have advised you not to change that, because that is just a real easy one to remember.
And those things that stand out like that seem to really pop.
Well,
with
yeah,
people
you
on
just
X.
put the picture of the Cheetos, right? Albert, thanks for joining us today. So let's talk first about let's talk about our good Senator Fetterman from Pennsylvania. Republicans like him. Democrats hate him. He'd probably lose a primary. He reminds me a lot of Mitt Romney. People don't realize Mitt Romney voted with Trump about 85, 90% of the time on actual policy. Just hated the man personally, right? Fetterman's not quite that way of Democrat officials, but he's strong on Israel, and he just speaks his mind on the shutdown of things. What's going on about there, and what are basically Pennsylvania voters thinking about him?
Yeah, quite interesting. We have a pretty maverick pair of senators in Pennsylvania. We have Dave McCormick, who just flipped. It was only U.S. Senate flip for Republicans of a swing state last cycle. And then Fetterman, who obviously came out of a very messy cycle in 2022, sort of with progressive populist left branding, and then has shed a lot of that progressivism, not necessarily in his voting record, as you guys mentioned,
Right,
but in his public stances and his unabashed support for Israel and their civilizational conflict with Hamas. And then on strong border enforcement, he's been pretty moderate on that issue, and energy production. He's been moderate for the Democratic caucus. So they view him as, the left views him as a traitor, which is incredibly motivating. It's not about his voting record. It's about kind of how he talks about things and what he's standing up for. And it just pisses them off. So he's a very unabashed, he's an interesting, strong guy. And if the Democratic primary were held today, he would lose it.
Does his position coming out and saying, hey, I would vote to end the shutdown, this thing's stupid, we need to do the business of the United States, is that a game changer for him in that all of a sudden now the big money players in the Democrat Party have a gimlet eye out for him?
I think the activist base already had a gimlet eye out for him, and now we have him scuppering their talking points on the shutdown, which definitely doesn't help with the higher level people. So, he's kind of pissing people off on the left at the high level and at the base level. And I think it's admirable, frankly. I think he's a common sense, straight talking guy. He had a terrible stroke in his election campaign in 2022. The left completely papered over it. The media did not report it. And now you see all these leaks about his cognitive abilities, which are clearly much stronger than they were as he's recovered. So you see they're starting to heat up against him. They did the same thing against Kristen Sinema in Arizona, forced her out of her seat. But it's a different year, and he's not up till 2028. So, he's got to make decisions about how he wants to run and where he wants to go. He says he doesn't want to be a Republican. He said that repeatedly. He's been approached. He'll continue being approached. I think it'd be interesting if he ran as an independent, but we'll have to see.
How's McCormick doing?
It's strong. Dave McCormick's somebody that in private is the same as he is in public. He's studious. He's thorough. His office tells me he reads everything with detail. He cares about issues. He's right where, the center right in Pennsylvania is. And I think he's having a really strong start for just squeaking out a U.S. Senate flip in 2024.
Does he have good, one thing about gentlemen like him in a true swing state like Pennsylvania, does he have good constituent service? Are you hearing that? Does he have a good crew on the ground in Pennsylvania?
Absolutely. His state director, Ryan Almond, is a former state senator from Lancaster, very connected in Harrisburg and across the state. He's got a really good team in Southeast PA, where I'm from, Philly area, Southwest. He has got, roots there, and he's got ancestral roots in Northeast PA. So he himself, his bio covers a lot of the state, and his constituent services are strong. The issues he's tackling with AI, foreign policy, he's been all over the Nippon Steel deal. So I think he's doing all the right things, and he's showing well for himself. 5 more years to prove it.
Pennsylvania is a tough state. I mean, Pennsylvania seems like a really tough state to campaign in because you've got to thread a needle of so many different economic and personal interests there with the coal industry, with the steel industry, with all these other things. It's going to be very interesting, Chuck, to see how that plays out over the next few years and what happens with Fetterman. I thought Sinema should have run as an independent. I think she could have won.
I think she would have won it.
I tend to think he would have a shot also.
I agree.
We're going to be coming back with more from Albert Eisenberg here in just a moment, folks. What brought him to our attention is a piece he had in Real Clear, Pennsylvania. Congressional Republicans can win big with healthcare solutions. We're going to dig into that when we're coming back.
Sam and I are always talking about being prepared, whether it's hurricanes in Florida, earthquakes in California, flooding in Arizona, or supply chain disruptions.
Exactly, Chuck. When pharmacies shut down, it does not matter how tough you are, you still need access to critical medicine.
That's why we trust Jace Medical. The Jace case comes with 5 life-saving antibiotics and key over-the-counter meds, so you're covered when things get disrupted.
And Jace goes beyond just the Jace case. They also offer first aid kits, daily prescriptions, and long-term nutrition with Jace Pantry. Don't wait for the next hurricane warning or natural disaster. Take control of your health and peace of mind today.
Visit jace.com and use code FUTURE at checkout for $10 off your order. That's FUTURE at JASE.com.
In today's digital world, standing out is more important than ever. Whether you're running for office, leading a cause, or hosting a vote for the cutest pet in town, you need a web domain that's simple, memorable, and action-oriented. You need a .vote web domain. It's clear, impactful, and establishes a lasting presence for your campaign. Don't wait. Head to GoDaddy.com or Name.com, type in your name.vote, and get started today. Because after all, every pet deserves a web address that's as special as they are.
All right, welcome back to Breaking Battlegrounds with yours, Chuck Warren. I'm Sam Stone. Our next guest up, Albert Eisenberg, political strategist and principal of Redbridge. Follow him on X at Albidelphia. Albert, one of the main reasons that we brought you on the program is a piece you had for Real Clear, Pennsylvania. Congressional Republicans can win big with healthcare solutions. Chuck and I literally last night were going back and forth on a private message about this. Healthcare is a disaster across this country. Republicans truly have not shown the leadership that's needed.
They have no answers.
No, it's terrible. You had some very good ideas. So but give us a kind of an overview of that piece.
Yeah, I mean, so all of my work as a strategist is kind of bringing ordinary solutions to share the values that we all have with regular working people. We have a lot of problems in our country. A lot of them have gotten worse, under 4 years of Joe Biden. And certainly healthcare has gotten more and more expensive and the outcomes have gotten worse since Obamacare. So this is crushing to regular working people, and Washington seems quite disconnected from that. We have declining outcomes in the country. Our life expectancy is going down for the first time in our nation's history. Our costs are 3x for prescriptions versus our peers in Western Europe. We have kids that have rising mental health issues. And it's not just health care, it's just sort of the holistic policy approach to the actual health of our people. And I'm arguing in the piece that we should care because it's the right thing to do, because our country and our citizens deserve better outcomes and stronger policies and things that can make us all feel more well, from our food supply to our pharmaceutical products to reducing screens in schools. And we should also care as conservatives because it's the largest major issue, consistently a top 3 issue with voters, where Republicans have the disadvantage time and time again. We can remember, obviously, when we retook the House under Paul Ryan and we were caught completely flat-footed with the Obamacare repeal. Our messaging as Republicans has been anywhere from, repeal Obamacare and we don't have another solution for you, which regular voters hate, to sort of, stuff that's going on in the food supply, which we could really win on, but then we have wacky focus on circumcision and, measles vaccines, which, don't tell voters you're taking away measles vaccines.
Yeah. The reality is we perform poorly on this polling with the public on healthcare because we really don't. We don't provide good solutions. We don't seem to provide solutions that will make a difference in our life. And look, I am conservative. Sam is too. I'm a free market guy, but not everything on this is a free market, right? I mean, this is just a really issue that now people feel they should have access to. And so what are the proposals you have that Republicans can win on this?
So there's a number of things, and as you could tell from my sort of meandering response on the first question, there's a lot here. And there's things that aren't even pharma and hospital related, like phone-free schools, which are proven to lift mental health and improve educational outcomes. That is a form of health policy. And getting kids more outdoor time, getting kids more less supervised, every adult is on them, time in nature. This is all stuff we should be talking about as conservatives that's going to improve a lot of regular people across our country. As far as direct healthcare policy, there's been progress from the One Big Beautiful Bill, which has now been rebranded, on direct primary care to lower costs. There's definitely been executive orders such as capping the cost of GLP-1 to $1,000, which is, a win for voters. And that's not necessarily a free market win, but it is a way that the government can leverage our massive power. And the government's the biggest provider of healthcare in the country, Medicare, Medicaid. So we should be using that clout to lower costs and bring down costs for people. The hospital systems have been consolidating in Pennsylvania and around the country. This is a big problem. There's a total lack of transparency. You go in, everyone knows this. They run you through all the tests they want, and then you get a bill 2 months later. Your insurance has covered some of it, and it's crushing for people. So there are regular free market solutions on affordability in healthcare that I think we need to center, and our legislators at the state and federal level need to center this. And then we need to message around it. We need to get in front of voters and say, hey, we are the party of solutions for this issue.
Well, you brought up a good point, Albert. I was actually talking to someone in the White House this morning, and you own a firm called Redbridge, which is about messaging, right? I mean, that's your forte. And regarding the shutdown, there is something that the White House and congressional Republicans are not doing. It's this. Democrats have turned this that people are going to lose these subsidies, right, on health care. The problem is with our side because we never message right. It's amazing actually Republicans ever win any elections, okay? It's this. They're losing these subsidies because Democrats voted unanimously in the Inflation Reduction Act to end these subsidies this year. Why are we not messaging that? Because if you can't message something simple like that, how are you going to message these health care? I mean, the reality is we have a majority in every chamber. Why are these people not out on every talk radio show and podcast every weekend when they're back in their districts explaining this message? And if you can't message that the Democrats voted to end these subsidies in the Inflation Reduction Act under Biden, what can you message? I mean, so tell me, Chuck, you're being crazy. We're messaging great, or am I right on this?
I think that Democrats have clearly talked out of both sides of their mouths. The ads write themselves. I think Republicans by nature just psychologically tend to march to the beat of our own drum in a lot of ways. So sort of coordinating and herding the cats is a challenge. But the White House has done a great job messaging other issues like the Israel-Hamas brokered deal. So I think it's within our power to create simple messages and then get our people out, get our representatives out in every channel where people are getting their regular information, earned media, radio stations like the Spanish language radio. This is all stuff we can do for free if we're focused on it. And then I also think that committees and PACs need to be spending right now. The traditional approach of, hey, turn on the spigot after Labor Day before the election and now we can try and win back the public support that's eroded doesn't work anymore. So we should be spending now for the 2026 races in vulnerable Democrats districts and really put some pressure on them.
You are preaching Chuck and I's language there because we have been saying for years that one of the great advantage Democrats have is that they never stop with this. They keep their messaging,
right, they have the media
campaigns going.
Yeah.
I want to talk about some of the healthcare solutions. Chuck, I think, you want an easy one to message, certificate of need, which is being used to block new hospitals, block new clinics, block new doctor practices. The easy message there is just to say, stop preventing doctors from opening new hospitals. Is that the kind of thing we need to be going after? Is because one of the main issues in healthcare is you're never going to get it under control without getting rid of the over bureaucratization that's come in under Obamacare and coding changes for Medicare, Medicaid.
Absolutely. I think we need to speak in the language that regular working voters understand, offer specific solutions that we're going to have the majority on, and then campaign around them. And it's like that, those three steps: speak to like a regular person about these issues, offer specific solutions, and then get in front of voters. It's really not that complicated. And especially when you see that this is the top pressing issue for voters where Republicans consistently have a disadvantage. This is why I'm banging the drum on this issue, and I appreciate you guys doing the same.
What in your mind would be, like, say, the first three things that Republicans should jump out with messaging this?
I think the consolidation of hospital systems and the fact that most doctors are now working for huge hospital systems is an undertold story that's a really big problem, and it's driving up costs. I think the big pharma, trying to cap costs and increase competition and make it so it's not this basically excavating value from American, hardworking Americans, and they're just profiteering a lot of items. I think that's a big problem that we should be in front of, where we have a natural advantage. And then I think something positive for younger people, like phone-free schools, is something that should be passed nationally. The outcomes are amazing. It's actually bipartisan. We could lead on that. And that shows that we're thinking about health, not just as far as pharmaceutical profits or what the hospital systems are doing, but actually in a broader and more holistic way, which is where the electorate has shifted as well.
Correct.
Would a physical fitness program for K-12, could go back to what we had with Reagan and JFK and all these others. It seems like there's just this huge gap there that could be addressed, and people would get it.
Absolutely. And that shift of younger men towards Republicans last cycle, and the podcast guys, like, that is something that we have eroded support since 2024 with those key voters that made us the majority and won us 7 swing states. We need to be, the boomers in Congress need to understand that those are the people that are going to make or break our elections, and we need to speak to them in their language and get them something to rally around. And I mean, RFK would be the perfect spokesman for something like that. Look at the guy.
Right.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. I want to switch from healthcare for a minute and go back to a piece you wrote about your grandfather, who you are named after. Could you tell us a little bit about the story and what happened and why Iran killed him?
Yes. My grandfather, Albert Votaw, was an American Quaker from a long Pennsylvania family of Quakers, it's a subset of Christians. He was a foreign service officer. First, he helped rebuild Western Europe after World War II, where he met my grandmother, who was a refugee from the Nazis, Jewish refugee from Hungary, and they married. He ended up working across the world. They lived in West Africa for almost 2 decades, Southeast Asia, and he was then sent to Beirut, Lebanon in 1983. And within weeks, Hezbollah, which is the armed terror militia that is sponsored by Iran, blew up the U.S. embassy, killing 17 Americans, among them my grandfather, unfortunately for my family, and maiming almost 100 other people. And then months later, they blew up the U.S. Marine barracks, I believe in October of 1983, which killed over 300 U.S. Marines. And with Iran being the largest state sponsor of terror in the world, and their proxy armies all over the Middle East, Yemen, Hamas, Hezbollah, the Bashar al-Assad regime in Syria. My point of the piece was for people to understand that Iran has been targeting Americans and American civilians for decades to kill. And there's been a lot of focus on the Israel-Hamas conflict for good reason. But when we zoom out, these people wake up every morning, the Iranian people, and they are forced to say, death to America, death to Israel. And what people on the American right need to understand is when Donald Trump took the courageous step to intervene and blow up the Iranian nuclear nascent facilities, he was preventing them from killing Americans down the line. It was not just to protect Israel. And that was the point of my piece. My grandfather was a peaceable, great man, I'm told. I never got to meet him, unfortunately. And he was murdered by a terrorist regime because he was an American civilian in Lebanon.
Well, thank you for sharing that story. And folks, we're going to put that on our social media site so you can download it and read it and share it with your friends and family as well. It's an important story to share. I have one last question for you before we wrap up with you. Do you feel the White House...
Probably, that they've been targeting America.
Yeah, 100%. One last question for you. Do you feel the Republicans are doing a good job on communicating with voters how they're going to make life more affordable?
I think it needs to be priorities 1 through 5 for the White House and for congressional Republicans to share how they are making life more affordable for working people, from housing to health care. I could write a similar piece on the housing crisis and how housing costs have skyrocketed for younger people and for everybody. That would be the center of any campaign. And I think we can win on those issues, but we need to focus on it.
It's a big hill to climb, obviously, because I think the Biden administration put in so many structural barriers to bringing it down from all these green energy programs and everything else they've done. But I love the focus today with both of our guests on Venezuela and Iran, because those seem to me, Chuck, two countries with populations that are ripe for bringing them into essentially the U.S. fold, where populations are very different than their governments, and we need to take advantage of that and get regime change in both of those countries.
I agree.
Folks, Breaking Battlegrounds will be back on the air next week, but make sure you're tuning in to our podcast segment. You can get that breakingbattlegrounds.vote or wherever you get your favorite podcasts. Go to Substack and subscribe. We've always got fantastic additional content for you there. And make sure you never want to miss Kylie's Corner. It's everyone's favorite segment. We'll be back next week.
I say this every election cycle, and I'll say it again. The 2024 political field was intense, so don't get left behind in 2025. If you're running for office, the first thing on your to-do list should be securing your name on the web. With a yourname.vote domain from GoDaddy.com, you'll stand out and make your mark. Don't wait. Get yours today.
Ho, 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 ho. What do you get when you mix cocoa, candy canes, and strong Wi-Fi signals? You get a podcast. That's right, Santa has a podcast. I'm telling stories from the North Pole, sharing elf updates, and answering your questions. And yes, spilling some holiday secrets. It's festive, it's fun, and fueled entirely by cookies. Tune in wherever you get your podcast. It's Santa Has a Podcast. Just press play.
All right, welcome to the podcast portion of Breaking Battlegrounds. I think, Jeremy, we just roll straight from one tune into another here. So
yeah, let's
hit the
do
music.
it. Let's do it.
World of sinning, Kylie's on a roll. Kylie's got a corner and she's gonna start spilling out all the true crime in the world we're living in. So come and take a spin and listen in.
Kylie from Texas, how are you doing?
I'm amazing. How are you guys today?
I'm doing good. So what murder and mayhem do you have for our listeners today?
Well, I felt like this week took us back to the 80s. We had a jewelry heist and an Italian mob
Yes.
NBA gambling scandal. It's kind of like a fun, but I was going to talk about the Louvre Museum today because I haven't looked too far into the
NBA thing's gonna be lasting for a
I can
while.
talk the NBA thing.
Yeah, it's gonna last.
We're gonna have a deep dive on that one.
Deep dive into that. But the Louvre Museum the heist caught my attention because it almost feels like I could have accomplished this. I was looking into the timeline on how these thieves successfully did this, and it really wasn't anything complicated. What had happened was it's now been a week, so they don't believe that they're getting any of the jewels back because at this point, it's probably all melted down, all changed into something else. But there was construction going on the museum, or at the museum. And so 4 people, I don't know if they were guys, 4 people just took a basket lift and they just drove it right up to the side of the museum. 2 guys got in the basket, took the basket up to the top window, broke the window, walked inside, broke the glass of almost $100 million worth of jewelry, and then walked out, and it was all done. Walked back out the window and took the little basket lift right back down, got on scooters, and drove off with it.
Okay, here's my thing about this. They were confronted by security guards and threatened them, and the security guards backed off. Europe, you are frippin' pathetic.
Well, it's the French, right?
I mean,
it's a great line from Modern Family where Jay's getting an award in Paris, France for the Closet Association, right? And they said he goes and says what the convention's called in French, and then it said closets at the end. She goes, "There's not a word for closets." He goes, "They're French. They probably went and protested before they finished the line." And that explains everything.
Come on, though. This is where Europe is getting pathetic.
No, and one of my favorite things about the internet is these people found a playlist on Spotify that was created 4 weeks ago called the Louvre Museum Heist. So they were like, did they create this playlist to have something to listen to? But I'm going to post the video of them going back down the lift because it probably took a solid minute, and those guys had to have been thinking this is the longest minute, but no one was coming after them. They're just going right down.
Well, no, they do not pursue actual criminals in Europe now. They just come after you if you said something bad about Muslims on X.
Right, exactly.
It took them an hour to shut down the museum. So this all occurred at 9:34 in the morning, happened within 4 minutes, and they didn't shut down the museum until 10:34.
The incompetence of the French knows no bounds.
So they think this is all melted down now?
Yeah, there was actually an FBI agent that was in the museum when this was going on. Yeah. And he was like, I'm on vacation, but was also trying to give advice because they're like, this has to be an inside job. They knew exactly what to do. They knew construction was going on. And he was like, if you don't get the jewels back within 24 to 48 hours, it's most likely going to be gone. They did recover a crown from Napoleon
that they dropped.
III's wife. Yeah, that they had dropped on the way out. But all the jewels, it's on like a market, like some, stolen market list, but guarantee you they're not going to be selling it as that.
No, I mean, this is the thing about jewels, right? It's fungible. You melt it down, you pop the diamonds and whatever out, you recut them. I mean, there's, this is, the French just kill me at this point. All of Europe.
Well, it's an amazing story, and when I talk to people about this, everybody loves a good jewel or art heist. Hollywood has made it very elegant. It seems very sexy. It's not like robbing a convenience store or bank. This is just simply, and it always seems to be very much a gentleman's pursuit, right? It's not a rogue thing.
I think if you find this one, you're gonna find almost certainly Africans behind. This one is a very, very simple heist in its execution. And I think one thing Europe has not, and I was talking to a cop buddy here because they've been looking at this with Latin American gangs, right? The criminals that European and U.S. authorities are used to dealing with are a much different, less brazen bunch than you're getting from Latin America and Africa.
Well, they stole 8 items. The French call it incalculable, the price on it. And it will be interesting to see. I don't think it. Why do they think it was melted down?
Because you can't resell them as what they are.
I personally think it went to a billionaire collector. I don't think this stuff's melted down. I think it's just some guy, some man or woman are holding it.
How would that person make money though? After?
I think it's just somebody. Look, they're the one thing about the billionaire culture. And again, I hope everybody in the studio becomes a billionaire, right?
Me too.
But I talked to a good friend who consults for 10 family offices that are worth billions each, right? So, and I said, we were talking one night, and he was talking about some of just the ridiculous things their kids do. And I said, what is the number that really ruins people? And he's done hedge funds, he does all this, and he deals in this world. And he said, once people get to 200 million plus, it really skews their perspective on the world. And I said, why do you think that is? And his comment was, because after 200 million, you realize you could pretty much buy yourself out of anything. And my feeling is on this, I don't think it's melted down. There's so much wealth. I mean, look, when you start having 10, 20, 30, 40, $50 billion, it's monopoly money. And it's just like, I have this. Let me show my buddies down on the safe.
Well, I hope for history you're right, Chuck. I just tend to think this is the kind of thing that.
But if it is a smash and grab of some third world criminals, then probably melted down. They're going to get $10 million up, 10 cents on the buck.
Right.
That's what they're going to do by fencing it.
Yeah.
Right? And that's the word, right? Fencing?
Yep.
Mm-hmm. So anyway, we will all gather here with Kylie when you're back in town and plan our jewelry or art heist soon to get that going.
Yeah, it doesn't seem that hard. We'll create a playlist and then we'll
just make sure it's done in France. There's going to be no repercussions.
Yeah, no, you're definitely not doing that in a red state.
You're not doing it in New York.
No. It was pathetic.
There is no New York security guard would have let the guy just get away because of a threat. They would have probably been shot trying to leave town on the motorcycle.
Absolutely, they would have been. That's what should have happened.
Kylie, you got anything else?
That's all for today.
I want to just bring up 2 points before we close. So, our debt is a mess in this country, and here's the problem. I do not feel it's not just leadership, and I know people like to blame Congress, they like to blame Republicans. I'm going to blame Democrats and voters. Period.
Fair.
There is nothing they do that show me they have any fortitude to reduce and balance our budget in any sense of the imagination.
Well,
and so when I hear people say, so for example, there's a story out today, U.S. debt has topped $38 trillion, okay? And what it said, Axios wrote about this, and this is the point why I don't think we have to have some real leadership. And frankly, what has to happen, people who are concerned about this, they need to go do a series of town halls and public education, like every city, every voting precinct saying, this is what we have, this is how here are our options to solve it. People need to, I don't think people even understand it because it's such a crazy number. But according to Axios, this $38 trillion national debt, the surge is driven by rising enrollment in entitlement programs. Mm-hmm. Primarily Social Security and Medicare as the population ages and swelling interest expenses due to higher interest rates. Analysts warn the debt is unsustainable, projecting the debt servicing costs will jump from $4 trillion to $14 trillion over the next decade, with debt potentially reaching 120% of our gross domestic product by 2035. Mm-hmm. Do you both believe that the American voter has any desire to reform these entitlements so we can get this under control?
I don't think they have any desire, but I don't think they would care if you did. And this is where it's different. And I would separate the American voter from the Democrats, because Democrats are down now to essentially 3 growing constituencies only, right? So they have the people who are government dependent.
Yep.
They have people who are the woke, the far left woke. And then government workers.
Yes.
And so they cannot do anything that government workers will not like, because their very tenuous grip on national elections is gone the minute they do.
Well, we have said this. I think one of the biggest things Trump could do, and he's got to pull a bipartisan commission together, but they have to go out. I think Social Security is the first thing they can solve.
How do you pull a bipartisan commission together when Democrats wouldn't? I mean, they'll refuse to participate. They will not participate.
I think you have to at least make the attempt.
I agree,
okay? But we've had some congressmen on here, according to Schweikert. I said, what's the easiest thing to tackle? And they say Medicare. I don't believe that is. I think the easiest one to solve first is Social Security.
I agree.
You raise the age of retirement up. You probably need to.
Well, okay. First, look, Republicans need to get over this one. All income needs to be taxed for Social Security.
I agree. So there's there's 2 things.
Get rid of the cap.
Get rid of the cap. Well, here's what I would do. I would maybe have a what I call a recess for the gap. So right now it's 137 or 27.
Yeah, whatever it is.
I would allow that non-payment go up to 250.
Okay.
And
that's creative. I like that.
And after 250, I would get rid of the cap, but the cap would only be for actual taxpayers.
Right.
I would not require the businesses to match it like they do now.
No, I agree. I agree.
And I think so if you do that and raise it to 68, 69, unless you're deathly ill and we want to take care of people, I think you can do that. And I think that makes sense. And I also think that is a wonderful message to send to the international markets that America's getting serious about this debt problem.
I'm going to get a little creative in a tweak to what you just said, Chuck.
Okay.
I think you divide jobs into two categories, the white and the blue collar.
Yeah.
And you raise the white collar limit more than the blue collar. The age.
Yeah, I mean, but whatever has to be done.
Because, I
agree. What your job is. Yeah. If you're working in a steel mill or pounding nails,
right, that's the issue.
Keep it at 66.
Right.
Go 66 cents. For white collar, you're going to 70.
Right.
And
that's it.
I agree. So maybe that's something we should write about. But, we also talked about today, again, with Albert, so Washington Post came out. Average Obamacare premiums are set to rise 30%. Okay? Folks, the Democrats unanimously voted for the Inflation Reduction Act, which eliminated this subsidy December this year. There's only one group of people to blame for this, and it is Democrats. And the second thing to blame Democrats for is they absolutely lied that Obamacare would make health insurance affordable. Mm-hmm. It's always been a lie. It's never been affordable. And till you understand that point, your conversation or your pushback on this makes no sense.
We have never adequately explained to people, and again, that the Democrats didn't pass Obamacare, that big pharma and big hospitals and big insurance passed and created Obamacare for themselves.
Correct.
With Democrat help.
Correct.
So the people the Democrats claim they're always fighting are the ones who directly use them with Democrats' permission to create a system that is destroying healthcare in this country. You and I have talked, a friend of mine, someone Zudi Jasser, running for Congress here against Greg Stanton for the second time. Talking with his team, I'm a patient of Dr. Jasser's. I went to him. He is the first actual physician that I have spent more than 15 minutes talking about just general health with.
Right.
Since basically Obamacare passed.
Right.
Right?
Right.
And if you have a real Cadillac plan, if you have access to Mayo and that kind of thing, that experience may not still be unusual for you. But if you're not, it is. And my point to him was you need to campaign on, when was the last time you spent 15 minutes with your doctor?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
We need to go after this stuff in a way people understand. That's where Albert is 100% correct.
Correct. I have one last story here. I was reading about it in the Desert Sun. It's based in Palm Springs. So there's a Palm Springs man pushing to recall every Palm Springs council person because they did a resolution on supporting Israel. And now he's quoting things like Amnesty International about the genocide Israel, supposedly committed, which they didn't commit genocide. No. First of all, and also believing Amnesty International is like believing the Gaza Health Ministry, which is just
Amnesty International
for Islamists.
And Amnesty International, I checked on this, Chuck. They get all their health statistics from the Gaza Health Ministry.
Yeah, which is just
right. And folks, Israel is not an apartheid state. They're not committing genocide. I mean, those two things are empirical. And I'm going to get in a little bit of trouble here, Chuck. I'm going to get us both in some hot water.
That's all right. Kylie and I don't have a government job, do we, Kylie? So go ahead.
Genocide has a very specific definition.
It does.
Right?
It does.
That you are. It is the racial cleansing of a population.
Yep.
Right? There are a lot of Arabs in the world who don't live in Gaza. You can't commit a genocide in Gaza no matter what you do. You could commit an atrocity, but it wouldn't be a genocide.
Well, and one last point on this. The reality is this. None of this wouldn't happen unless there was an unprovoked attack on 10/7 where over 1,300 people were killed, raped, and mutilated. Hostages were taken. Many hostages died in the captivity. The people have not, based on the peace agreement President Trump helped pushed, and literally President Trump pushed this. He willed this through.
You noticed there were no women?
Yes, because the women were raped.
And they killed them because they couldn't release them.
Because they couldn't talk. And you still have, is it 20 of the hostages who died? They still have not been returned yet?
Yep.
They're not even living up to their agreement.
And they're running around murdering everyone who opposes them in Gaza.
There's literally a civil war in Gaza right now. There's like literally a civil war.
Yeah.
So anyway, folks, look, before you start chirping about things, just get the facts. Just remember, this shutdown, that it has been 13 times now Senate Democrats have voted against reopening the government, that the subsidies are ending because Democrats unanimously voted for the Inflation Reduction Act, which ended the subsidy, and that now those subsidies are going to increase 30% because guess what? Obamacare was never affordable. You bought into the lie. So start doing a little more research. Your life will be better. On behalf of Jeremy, Kylie, Sam, and I, we hope you have a fantastic weekend, and we'll talk to you next week.